The next topic is identifying participants and non-participants. During conversations, speakers establish their and other participants' roles. That is, who will participate in a conversation and in what capacity. So in a conversation, we have participants. The normal participants are the speaker and the recipient. But sometimes you have a conversation setting where you have speaker as well as the recipient, but then you have other participants as well. There are some side participants who are not actively, assertively engaged in a process of conversation, but they are side participants who are unaddressed recipients, you may call them. They could be bystanders or people who are not a part of a conversation. Then you have maybe overhearers or eavesdropper who are just there again in a situation but who have no concern with the particular conversation and they just overhear what the information is. So we have side participants, we have assertive or active participants, and then you have eavesdroppers. So there are different participants in a process of conversation. Sometimes some side participants who are not maybe during the start of conversation is a part of conversation, but they can be asked to become a part of a conversation. Again, that depends on the speakers who are actively engaged, that how they would make the side participants an active participant of the conversation. So it is important for any conversation that you have specific participants and they have specific participatory roles to play in a specific conversation. So now we will look at some of the examples related to these different types of participants, that how speakers need to identify who should be the active participants and who are the non-participants, and sometimes side participants who maybe at the start of a conversation are considered as non-participants but can be engaged in a process of a conversation. So let's discuss that. Now you have one image and a little bit of the information regarding that. Clark has conducted a study with regard to the participants and non-participants' role and has pointed out conversation often take place in a context in which various types of non-participants are present. For example, if you look at the image, you have a speaker and then you have an addressee. They are the all participants. Then you have another circle on your right. You can see on your side you have side participant. Then next to it you have bystander, who is maybe a kind of side participant. And then on the last column you have eavesdropper, who is overhearer. So as you can see, the roles in terms of the active participation, moving on to less active participation to non-participants, and that is how these different participants play their role. Now, giving an example, for example, Clark gave example that Alan asks Barbara a question. So Alan and Barbara can then be considered as the participants in a conversation. Suppose Connie has been present during the conversation but is not directly involved in the question. So she becomes a side participant in the conversation. Others with an earshot are overhearers who come in two varieties. They can be bystanders. Bystanders are those who are openly present but do not participate in the conversation. Eavesdropper are those who listen without the permission of the speaker. In fact, The speaker has no awareness about the information being heard by the eavesdropper. So you have participants, you have side participants, and then you have overhearers who could be bystanders and eavesdroppers. Many conversational situations bring these roles into play. We resort to a variety of strategies when dealing with overhearers, including disclosure, concealment, and indifference, according to Clark and Schaeffer. Now, considering, for example, a situation in which a man and a woman were served by an apt waitress in a very apt manner in any restaurant. Now, the waitress dropped the man's fork on the floor but did not replace them. After the waitress brought the food but was still within earshot, the man asked his companion, "Could I use one of your forks?" In this instance, the speaker's apparent intent was to allow the bystander to hear him without having to conceal or confront her about her lapse. Thus, although the waitress is a bystander, the intent is to disclose the information that is communicated to the dinner companion. As another example, when somebody is, let's say, at the airport, trying to say goodbye to the loved ones, all sorts of strangers are there nearby. Although we may wish to engage in some private conversation, there are many potential eavesdroppers. We resort to a variety of strategies in these kinds of situations to conceal our meaning from eavesdropper, including referring to personal events, for example, the event we talked about yesterday. Different persons perform different roles as participants and non-participants of a conversational setting. The roles of the participants during social interaction are particularly important for understanding spoken discourse. While these roles might be fixed in some social setting, for example lectures, most conversational settings allow for shifting of roles.